Sarah Martinez sat alone at the corner table in the school cafeteria. Her lunch tray was in front of her, but she wasn't eating. She was watching the other students laugh and talk. Their mouths moved fast. Some threw their heads back when they laughed. Others leaned in close to whisper secrets. Sarah could see it all, but she couldn't hear any of it. She was 16 years old and had been deaf since the day she was born. The hearing aids in her ears helped a little bit. She could hear some sounds, loud noises, deep voices. But music? Music was different. Music was something she felt more than heard. Sarah looked down at her worn brown notebook. It was old and the corners were bent. Inside were pages and pages of notes. Not school notes. Music notes.
She had been writing them for 2 years now.
Nobody knew about it. Nobody except Professor Morrison. The lunch bell would ring in 10 minutes. Sarah decided to go to the music room. She went there every day during lunch. Not to play, just to watch. Just to feel close to something she loved. She stood up and carried her tray to the trash. Some students stared at her as she walked by. They always did. Sarah was used to it. She kept her eyes forward and walked out of the cafeteria. The hallway was empty. Her footsteps made soft sounds on the floor. She could feel the vibration through her shoes. Everything was vibration to Sarah. That's how she understood the world. The music room was at the end of the east hallway. It had a big window on the door. Sarah could look inside without going in. She reached the door and peered through the glass. Inside there was a beautiful black piano. It was a grand piano. The lid was open. The keys were white and black and perfect. Sarah pressed her hand against the cool glass of the door. She wished she could go inside. She wished she could sit at that piano and play, but she was afraid. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of what they would think. A deaf girl playing piano. They would laugh. They would mock her. So she stayed outside and just looked. Sarah was about to turn away when the music room door suddenly opened. 3 students walked in. Sarah's heart sank. It was Derek Chen and his friends. Derek was the star piano player at Lincoln High School. He was 17, tall, confident. His black hair was always perfectly styled. He wore expensive clothes. Everyone knew Derek. Everyone liked Derek. Well, almost everyone. Derek had won every piano competition since he was 10 years old. Trophies lined the shelf in the music room. Most of them had his name on them. Teachers loved him. Students admired him. Derek knew he was good, and he made sure everyone else knew it too. His 2 friends followed him into the room, Marcus and Jason. They were on the basketball team. They didn't care about music. They just liked being around Derek because he was popular. Sarah stepped back from the window. She should leave. She should go somewhere else. But her feet wouldn't move. She wanted to see Derek play, even if it hurt to watch, even if it reminded her of everything she couldn't have. Derek sat down at the piano bench. He cracked his knuckles. Then he placed his fingers on the keys. Sarah couldn't hear the music, but she could see his hands moving, fast and smooth. His fingers danced across the keys like water flowing down a stream. Marcus and Jason stood behind him. They were looking at their phones. They weren't even watching. They didn't care about the music. They didn't understand how lucky Derek was. Sarah leaned closer to the window. She watched Derek's hands. She watched the way his body moved with the music. She closed her eyes for a moment and tried to imagine the sound. She had heard piano music before, when her hearing aids worked well. When someone played very loud, she remembered what it sounded like. Sort of. When she opened her eyes, Derek was looking right at her. Sarah's stomach dropped. Their eyes met through the glass. Derek stopped playing. He said something to Marcus and Jason. They all turned to look at her. Sarah wanted to run. But before she could move, Derek stood up. He walked to the door. He opened it. "Can I help you?" Derek asked. His voice was clear and loud. Sarah could hear it through her hearing aids. "I was just looking," Sarah signed. Then she spoke the words out loud. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Flat, unclear. She hated speaking out loud. Derek looked at her hearing aids. Then he looked at her hands. He had seen her sign language. "Oh," Derek said. A small smile appeared on his face. Not a friendly smile. "You're the deaf girl, right?" "Sarah?" Sarah nodded. Her cheeks felt hot. She wanted to disappear. "What are you doing here?" Derek asked. "At the music room, I mean." "I like music," Sarah signed and spoke. Derek's smile grew bigger. Marcus and Jason came to the door. They stood behind Derek and looked at Sarah. "You like music?" Derek repeated. He said it slowly, like he was talking to a small child. That's interesting. Sarah didn't like his tone. She could tell he was making fun of her. But she didn't say anything. "Can you even hear music?" Marcus asked. He wasn't trying to be mean. He was just curious. "A little bit," Sarah signed and spoke. "I can feel it too." "The vibrations," Derek laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh, just a small one. But Sarah saw it. She saw the way his eyes looked at her. Like she was a joke. "That's not really the same thing though, is it?" Derek said. He crossed his arms. "I mean, music is about hearing. About sound. If you can't hear it, you can't really understand it." Sarah felt something hot rise in her chest. Anger. She had felt this before, many times. When people told her what she could and couldn't do. When people made decisions about her life without asking her. "I understand music," Sarah signed firmly. She spoke the words too, even though her voice shook. "Really?" Derek raised his eyebrows. "Do you play an instrument?" Sarah hesitated. Should she tell him? Should she tell him about her secret lessons with Professor Morrison? About the 2 years she had spent learning piano? About the hours and hours of practice? "I'm learning," Sarah finally signed and spoke. Derek's laugh was louder this time. Marcus and Jason joined in. They weren't being cruel on purpose. They just thought it was funny. A deaf girl learning piano. It seemed impossible to them. "Learning what?" "Piano," Derek asked. He shook his head. "No offense, but that seems kind of pointless. How can you learn piano if you can't hear it?" "Beethoven was deaf," Sarah signed and spoke. Her hands moved fast, sharp. "He still made music." Derek rolled his eyes. "Yeah, but Beethoven went deaf later in life. He already knew music. He already understood it." "That's completely different." Sarah bit her lip. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell Derek that he was wrong, that music wasn't just about hearing, that it was about feeling, about emotion, about something deeper than sound waves hitting your ear. But she couldn't find the words. And even if she could, Derek wouldn't listen. He had already made up his mind about her. "Look," Derek said. His voice was softer now, almost kind. But Sarah could hear the pity in it. "It's cool that you like music, really. But maybe you should find a different hobby. Something more realistic." "Yeah," Jason added. "Like photography. Or painting. You know, something visual." Sarah's hands clenched into fists, her notebook pressed against her chest. Inside were dozens of pieces she had been working on. Music she had learned. Music she had felt. Music that lived in her bones. "I can play," Sarah signed and spoke. Her voice was quiet but firm. Derek sighed. "I'm sure you can press some keys. But playing piano, real piano, that takes years of training. It takes talent. It takes—" "I know what it takes," Sarah interrupted. She rarely interrupted people. But she couldn't listen to this anymore. Derek looked surprised. Then he laughed again. "Okay, sure, whatever you say." He started to close the door. The conversation was over. Sarah was dismissed. But then something happened. Something inside Sarah snapped. Maybe it was all the years of being told what she couldn't do. Maybe it was all the times people looked at her with pity. Maybe it was the way Derek smiled at her like she was a child playing pretend. "Wait," Sarah signed and spoke. Derek paused. The door was half closed. "Yeah? Can you play piano?" Sarah asked. Derek looked confused. "Can I play piano?" "Yeah, obviously. I've been playing since I was 5. "Why?" Sarah took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. This was crazy. This was stupid. But she couldn't stop herself. "I want to challenge you," Sarah signed and spoke. The hallway went quiet. Derek stared at her. Marcus and Jason stared at her. Even Sarah couldn't believe what she had just said. "Challenge me?" Derek repeated slowly. "To what?" "The state competition," Sarah signed and spoke. "In 6 weeks. We both enter. We see who's better." Derek's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. For a moment he looked completely shocked. Then he started laughing. Really laughing. His whole body shook with it. Marcus and Jason joined in. Their laughter echoed down the empty hallway. "You're joking, right?" Derek said when he finally stopped laughing. Tears were in his eyes from laughing so hard. Sarah shook her head. "I'm serious." Derek wiped his eyes. "Sarah, listen. I don't want to embarrass you. The state competition is serious. It's for real musicians, people who have trained their whole lives. I've won it 3 times already. Then you should win easily, Sarah signed and spoke. What are you afraid of? That made Derek stop smiling. Nobody questioned his skills. Nobody challenged him. He was the best piano player at Lincoln High School. Everyone knew it. I'm not afraid of anything, Derek said. His voice had an edge to it now. Fine, you want to compete? Let's compete. But don't come crying to me when you embarrass yourself in front of everyone. I won't, Sarah signed and spoke. Good, Derek said. This is going to be fun to watch. He started to close the door again, but then he paused and looked back at Sarah. Actually, this is perfect, Derek said. A mean smile crossed his face. Everyone will see. Everyone will understand. Music isn't for everyone. Some people just aren't meant for it. He closed the door. Through the window, Sarah could see Derek, Marcus, and Jason laughing. Derek sat back down at the piano. He started playing again. His friends pulled out their phones. Sarah stood alone in the hallway. Her whole body was shaking. What had she done? Had she really just challenged Derek Chen to a piano competition? She looked down at her notebook. Her hands were trembling. She had been taking lessons for 2 years. But 2 years wasn't enough. Derek had been playing since he was 5. That was 12 years of practice. 12 years of experience. Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes. She turned and walked away from the music room. Her footsteps were fast, almost running. She needed to get away. She needed to think. She pushed through the school's front doors and stepped outside. The afternoon sun was warm on her face. Students were scattered across the lawn. Some were eating lunch. Others were studying. A few were playing frisbee. Sarah found an empty bench under a large oak tree. She sat down and opened her notebook. The pages were filled with musical notes, timing marks, her own handwriting explaining how each piece should feel. She turned to a blank page and pulled out a pencil. She started to write. What have I done? Why did I say that? Derek is right. I can't compete with him. I'm deaf. I can't hear the music the way he can. I can't. Sarah stopped writing. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. No, that was wrong. That was what everyone else thought. That was what Derek thought. But it wasn't what Professor Morrison taught her. She remembered her first lesson with Professor Morrison 2 years ago. She had been so nervous, so scared. She thought he would laugh at her like everyone else did. But he didn't laugh. He smiled, a warm, kind smile. And then he said something she would never forget. Music isn't just sound, Sarah. Music is vibration. Music is emotion. Music is the space between the notes. You can feel all of that. You already do. Professor Morrison was deaf too. He had lost his hearing at 25 in a car accident. But he kept playing piano for another 10 years. He performed in concerts.
He taught students.
He lived and breathed music. Then the world told him to stop. People said a deaf man couldn't teach music, couldn't understand music, couldn't be a real musician. So he stopped performing. He stopped teaching in public. But he never stopped playing. And 2 years ago, when Sarah found him through a deaf community website, he agreed to teach her in secret. Sarah opened her eyes. She looked at the words she had written. Then she crossed them out, hard, the pencil pressed deep into the paper. She wrote new words. I can do this. I have to do this. Not just for me, for everyone who's been told they can't, for everyone who's been laughed at, for everyone who's been dismissed. Sarah closed her notebook. She stood up from the bench. The competition was in 6 weeks. That meant she had 6 weeks to prepare, 6 weeks to practice, 6 weeks to prove that Derek was wrong. It wouldn't be easy. It would probably be the hardest thing she had ever done. But she had to try. Sarah looked back at the school building. Through one of the windows, she could see the music room. She could see Derek still sitting at the piano, still playing, still confident. He had no idea what was coming. Sarah turned and started walking home. She needed to call Professor Morrison. She needed to tell him what happened. She needed to work harder than she had ever worked before. The sun was warm on her back as she walked. The wind moved through the trees. She couldn't hear the rustling leaves, but she could see them dancing. She could feel the breeze on her skin. That was enough. That had always been enough. Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She typed a message to Professor Morrison. "I need to see you today. Emergency, I did something crazy." The response came 30 seconds later. "Come over now. I'll put on tea." Sarah smiled. Professor Morrison always knew when something important was happening. He understood her better than anyone. She walked faster now. Her house was 20 minutes away. From there, she would take the bus to Professor Morrison's apartment across town. They would talk. They would plan. They would figure out how to make this impossible thing possible. As she walked, Sarah thought about Derek's words. Music is about hearing, about sound. He was wrong. Music was about so much more than that. Music was about emotion, about expressing something words couldn't say, about connecting with something deep inside yourself and pulling it out into the world. Sarah knew music. She felt it every time she put her hands on piano keys. She felt it in the vibrations that traveled up her arms. She felt it in the way her heart responded to certain combinations of notes. She felt it in her soul. Derek could hear music, but did he really feel it? Did he understand it? Or was he just good at moving his fingers fast? Sarah didn't know the answer to that. But she would find out. In 6 weeks on that competition stage, everyone would find out. She reached her house and unlocked the front door. Her mother was at work. Her father, too. The house was empty and quiet. Sarah liked it that way. She ran upstairs to her room and grabbed her backpack. She threw in her notebook, her phone charger, and a water bottle. Then she ran back downstairs and out the door. The bus stop was 2 blocks away. Sarah made it just as the bus pulled up. She climbed on board and found a seat near the back. As the bus moved through the city, Sarah stared out the window. She watched people walking on the sidewalks. She watched cars stopping at red lights. She watched the world moving around her. Everyone had their own story, their own struggles, their own dreams. Sarah's dream was piano, and for 2 years she had kept that dream quiet, secret, hidden away where nobody could laugh at it. But not anymore. Now everyone would know. Now everyone would watch. Now she had to prove that her dream was real. The bus stopped at 5th and Main Street. Sarah got off and walked 3 blocks to Professor Morrison's apartment building. It was old. The paint was peeling. But inside on the 3rd floor was a home filled with music. Sarah climbed the stairs and knocked on door 3B. The door opened immediately. Professor Morrison stood there with his warm smile. He was 72 years old. His hair was white. His hands were wrinkled. But his eyes were sharp and alive. "Come in, child," he signed. "Tell me everything." Sarah walked inside and the door closed behind her. The apartment smelled like tea and old books. A piano sat in the corner. The same piano where Sarah had learned everything she knew. She sat down on the worn couch. Professor Morrison handed her a cup of tea. Then he sat across from her and waited. Sarah took a deep breath. Then she told him everything. The music room, Derek, the mocking. The challenge, all of it. When she finished, Professor Morrison was quiet for a long moment. He sipped his tea slowly. His eyes looked far away like he was remembering something. Finally, he set down his cup and signed. "Good," Sarah blinked. That wasn't what she expected. "Good? Professor, I just challenged the best piano player in the school to a competition. A competition I'll probably lose." "How is that good?" Professor Morrison smiled. "Because now you have something real to work toward. Before you were hiding, practicing in secret, keeping your gifts small and quiet. Now you have a reason to let it out, to show the world what you can do." "But what if I fail?" Sarah signed. "What if I embarrass myself? What if Derek is right? Then you fail," Professor Morrison signed simply. "So what? Failure isn't the end. It's just information. It tells you what to work on, where to improve. Every great musician has failed many, many times." Sarah looked down at her tea. Steam rose from the cup in thin white wisps. "I'm scared," she signed. "Of course you are," Professor Morrison signed back. "Only fools have no fear. Fear means you care. Fear means it matters. Use that fear. Let it push you forward." Sarah looked up at him. "Do you really think I can do this?" Professor Morrison leaned forward. His eyes were serious now, intense. "I know you can," he signed. "Not because you're talented, not because you're special, but because you work harder than anyone I've ever taught, because you feel music deeper than most hearing people ever will, and because you have something Derek doesn't have." "What?" Sarah signed. "A reason to play," Professor Morrison signed. "Derek plays because he's good at it. Because people expect him to. The next morning, Sarah woke up before her alarm went off. Her fingers were sore from yesterday's practice session with Professor Morrison. They had worked for 4 hours straight. 4 hours of scales, 4 hours of timing exercises, 4 hours of the same section over and over until Sarah's hands cramped. But she didn't care about the pain. She had a goal now. A real goal. Something to work toward. Sarah got dressed and went downstairs. Her mother was making breakfast in the kitchen. Maria Martinez was a nurse. She worked long shifts at the hospital, but she always made time for breakfast with Sarah. "Morning, sweetie," her mother signed and spoke. She had learned sign language when Sarah was a baby. Her signing was perfect now. Natural, like it was her first language too. "Morning, Mom," Sarah signed back. She sat down at the table. Her mother placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of her. Then she sat down with her own plate. She looked at Sarah carefully. "You came home late yesterday," she signed. "I was at Professor Morrison's," Sarah signed. Her mother nodded. She knew about the lessons. She had always supported Sarah's love of music, even when other people said it was pointless. "Something is different," her mother signed. "I can see it in your face."
What happened?
Sarah hesitated. Should she tell her mother about the challenge? About Derek? About the competition? She decided to tell the truth. She always told her mother the truth. Sarah explained everything. Her mother listened quietly. She didn't interrupt. She just watched Sarah's hands move as she signed the whole story. When Sarah finished, her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and took Sarah's hands in hers. "Are you sure about this?" She signed. "No," Sarah signed honestly. "But I have to try," her mother smiled. It was a sad smile, a worried smile, but also a proud smile. "Then I'm with you," she signed. "Whatever you need. Whatever happens. I'm with you." Sarah felt tears in her eyes again. She squeezed her mother's hands. "Thank you," she signed. They finished breakfast together. Then Sarah grabbed her backpack and headed to school. The morning was cold and gray. Rain clouds covered the sky. Sarah pulled her jacket tighter around herself. The bus ride to school felt longer than usual. Sarah's stomach was tight with nervousness. Today, everyone would know. Today, the whole school would hear about her challenge to Derek. She was right. As soon as Sarah walked through the school's front doors, she felt eyes on her. Students were staring, whispering, pointing. Some were laughing. Others looked confused. Sarah kept her head down and walked to her locker. But before she could reach it, someone stepped in front of her. It was Emma Park, Derek's girlfriend. Emma was beautiful. Everyone said so. She had long black hair and perfect skin. She was captain of the dance team. She was smart, popular, and she had been dating Derek for 2 years. "Sarah," Emma said. She spoke slowly so Sarah could read her lips. "Can we talk?" Sarah nodded. Emma led her to an empty classroom. They went inside and Emma closed the door. "Is it true?" Emma asked. "Did you really challenge Derek to the competition?"
Sarah nodded again. Emma ran her hand through her hair.
She looked stressed, tired. "Why would you do that?" Emma asked. He's really good, Sarah. Like, really good. I don't want to see you get hurt." Sarah pulled out her phone. She typed a message and showed it to Emma. "I know he's good, but I'm tired of people telling me what I can't do." Emma read the message. She sighed and sat down on one of the desks. "Look, I get it," Emma said. "I do. People underestimate me too because I'm a dancer. They think it's not a real sport. They think it's easy, so I understand wanting to prove yourself." She paused. She looked down at her hands. "But Derek, he's not going to go easy on you. He's going to try to destroy you. Not because he's a bad person, but because he doesn't like being challenged. Especially not by—" Emma stopped. She bit her lip. "By a deaf girl," Sarah typed on her phone. Emma looked ashamed. "I wasn't going to say that." "But that's what he thinks," Sarah typed. Emma didn't argue. She couldn't, because they both knew it was true. "Just be careful," Emma said finally. "Derek can be mean when he wants to be." Sarah nodded. She understood. She had already seen Derek's mean side yesterday. Emma stood up and walked to the door, but before she left, she turned back. "For what it's worth," Emma said quietly, "I hope you do well. I hope you surprise everyone." Then she was gone. Sarah stood alone in the empty classroom. She looked out the window at the gray sky. Rain was starting to fall. Small drops hit the glass and rolled down in tiny rivers. The bell rang. Time for first period. Sarah grabbed her backpack and walked into the hallway. Students rushed past her, rushing to class, rushing to their lives. First period was English. Sarah liked English. She liked reading. She liked stories. Stories made sense. They had a beginning, middle, and end. They had rules. She sat down at her desk. Other students filed into the classroom. Some of them stared at her. Some whispered to their friends. Word had definitely spread. The teacher, Mr. Kim, started the lesson. Sarah tried to focus. She tried to read his lips. She tried to pay attention to the words on the board. But her mind kept wandering back to the challenge, back to Derek, back to the piano. What piece should she play at the competition? Professor Morrison said they would decide together. They would pick something that showed emotion, something that showed feeling, not just technical skill. Second period was math. Sarah was good at math. Numbers made sense. They were logical, clear, black and white. But today even math couldn't hold her attention. She kept thinking about music, about rhythm, about timing, about the way her fingers needed to move across the keys. At lunch, Sarah went to the cafeteria. She got her food and looked for a place to sit. Her usual table in the corner was empty. She started walking toward it. "Hey, deaf girl." Sarah turned. Marcus, Derek's friend, was calling to her. He was sitting with a group of other students. They were all looking at her. Sarah walked over. She didn't want to, but she couldn't ignore them. "That would make things worse, is it true?" Marcus asked. He was smiling, like this was all very funny to him. "You're really going to compete against Derek?" Sarah nodded. The whole table started laughing. Not cruel laughter, just disbelief, like she had told them she was going to fly to the moon. "That's insane," a girl named Jessica said. "Derek is going to destroy you." "Yeah," another boy added. "No offense, but you can't even hear. How are you supposed to play piano?" Sarah felt her face get hot. She wanted to sign back, to argue, to defend herself. But there were too many of them. Too many voices. Too many mouths moving at once. She turned and walked away. Behind her, she could hear more laughter, more comments. But she didn't look back. Sarah found her corner table and sat down alone. She opened her lunch, but didn't eat. Her stomach was twisted in knots. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she should withdraw from the competition. Maybe she should just forget the whole thing and go back to practicing in secret. No, she couldn't do that. She had made a challenge. She had to follow through. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened her messages. She typed a message to Professor Morrison. "Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Maybe they're right." The response came quickly. "Everyone thought Beethoven was crazy too. Everyone thought I was crazy when I kept playing after going deaf. Crazy is just another word for brave. Come to my apartment after school. We have work to do." Sarah smiled. Professor Morrison always knew what to say. She put her phone away and tried to eat. The cafeteria was loud around her. She couldn't hear most of it. Just bits and pieces, laughter, shouts, the scrape of chairs on the floor. But then she felt something. A vibration. Heavy footsteps. Someone walking toward her table. Sarah looked up. Derek was standing there. His friends were behind him. Jason, Marcus, a few others from the basketball team. "So," Derek said. He sat down across from her without asking. "The competition is in 6 weeks. Have you even picked a piece yet?" Sarah shook her head. Derek smiled. "I'm playing Rachmaninoff, Prelude in C-sharp minor. Do you know it?" Sarah nodded. She knew it. It was one of the most difficult piano pieces ever written. Fast, complex, technically demanding. "Of course you don't really know it," Derek said. "You can't hear it. You've probably never actually heard it played properly." Sarah's hands clenched into fists under the table. "I have an idea," Derek continued. "Why don't we make this more interesting? Let's make a bet." "What kind of bet?" Sarah typed on her phone and showed him. Derek leaned back in his chair. He looked very pleased with himself. "If I win," Derek said, "you have to admit in front of the whole school that deaf people can't really understand music. You have to tell everyone that I was right." Sarah's eyes went wide. She shook her head hard. "Come on," Derek said. "You're so confident, right? So sure you can compete with me? Then take the bet." "What if I win?" Sarah typed. Derek laughed. "You won't, but fine. If you win, which you won't, I don't know. I'll do whatever you want." Sarah stared at him. This was wrong. This whole thing was wrong, but she couldn't back down now. If she refused the bet, Derek would tell everyone she was scared, that she knew she would lose. Sarah took a deep breath. Then she typed on her phone. Deal! Derek's smile got bigger. Perfect. This is going to be great. He stood up. His friends followed him. They walked away, laughing and talking. Sarah watched them go. What had she done? The challenge was already hard enough. Now she had added a bet that would humiliate her if she lost, a bet that would hurt everyone like her. Sarah put her head in her hands. This was spiraling out of control, but there was no going back now. She had to win. She had to. The rest of the school day passed in a blur. Sarah couldn't focus on anything. Her teacher's lips moved, but she couldn't make sense of the words. Her notes were messy and incomplete. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. When the final bell rang, Sarah practically ran out of the school. She needed to get to Professor Morrison's apartment. She needed help. She needed guidance. The bus ride felt like it took forever. Sarah stared out the window and watched the city pass by, people going about their normal lives, people who didn't know or care about her problems, people who weren't facing impossible challenges. Finally, the bus reached her stop. Sarah jumped off and ran the 3 blocks to Professor Morrison's building. She climbed the stairs 2 at a time and knocked on his door. He opened it immediately. One look at her face and he knew something had happened. Come in, he signed. Sit, tell me. Sarah collapsed onto the couch. She told him everything. The stares at school, the laughter, Emma's warning, and then the bet with Derek. When she finished, Professor Morrison was quiet for a long time. He walked to his piano and sat down on the bench. His old hands touched the keys gently. When I was your age, he signed after a while, I was the best piano player in my school too. Just like Derek, everyone knew my name. Everyone came to my concerts. I thought I was special. I thought I was better than everyone else. He paused. His fingers played a few soft notes. Then I had my accident, he signed. Car crash. Severe head trauma. I woke up in the hospital and couldn't hear anything. Complete silence. Sarah knew this story, but she let him tell it again. I thought my life was over, Professor Morrison signed. I thought I could never play again. Why would I? Music is sound, right? If you can't hear it, what's the point? He turned to look at Sarah. But then something happened, he signed. I was in my hospital room one night. Couldn't sleep. I got up and walked down the hall. I passed by the chapel, and I felt something. What? Sarah signed. Vibration, Professor Morrison signed. Someone was playing the chapel piano. I couldn't hear it, but I could feel it through the floor, through the walls. It was like the whole building was singing. He stood up and walked over to Sarah. That's when I understood, he signed. Music isn't just sound. It's vibration. It's movement. It's emotion. It's the space between the notes. It's everything the sound carries with it. He took Sarah's hands in his. Derek thinks music is about technical perfection, he signed. About playing the notes correctly. About speed and precision. And he's not wrong. Those things matter. But they're not what music is really about. Then what is it about? Sarah signed. Connection, Professor Morrison signed. Music is about connecting with something deep inside yourself. About expressing emotion that words can't capture. About making other people feel what you feel. He let go of her hands and walked back to the piano. Derek can play Rachmaninoff perfectly, he signed. Every note exactly right. Every timing precisely correct. But can he make people cry? Can he make them feel something real? That's what we're going to teach you. Sarah stood up and walked to the piano. She sat down on the bench next to him. What piece should I play? She signed. Professor Morrison smiled. Beethoven. Moonlight Sonata. Third movement. Sarah's eyes went wide. The third movement was incredibly difficult. Fast, aggressive, passionate. I know it's hard, Professor Morrison signed. But it's perfect. Beethoven wrote it when he was losing his hearing. When he was angry and scared and frustrated, all of that emotion is in the music. And you can understand that emotion better than any hearing person, because you live it every day. Sarah looked down at the piano keys. Could she do this? Could she really play one of the most difficult pieces ever written? In front of judges? In front of the whole school? I'm scared, she signed. Good, Professor Morrison signed. Use that fear. Let it fuel you. Let it push you to work harder than you've ever worked. He placed her hands on the keys. We start now, he signed. From today until the competition, you practice every single day. Morning and night, weekends, every free moment. Can you do that? Sarah thought about it. She thought about Derek's confident smile, about his mean words, about the bet, about everyone who had ever told her she couldn't do something. She nodded. Yes, she signed. I can do that. Then let's begin, Professor Morrison signed. For the next 3 hours, they worked on the first page of the Moonlight Sonata's third movement. Just the first page. Over and over and over. Professor Morrison taught her to feel the music in a different way, not just to press the keys, but to understand the emotion behind each note. The anger, the passion, the defiance. Beethoven was fighting against his deafness when he wrote this, Professor Morrison signed during a break. He was angry. Angry at the world. Angry at fate. Angry that something he loved was being taken away. That anger is in every note. You have to feel that anger. You have to channel it. Sarah understood. She felt that anger too. Anger at people who looked at her differently. Anger at a world that told her she was limited. Anger at Derek for mocking her dream. She put her hands back on the keys. She closed her eyes. And she played. This time was different. This time she wasn't just pressing keys. She was expressing something. All the frustration. All the pain. All the determination. When she finished, she opened her eyes. Professor Morrison was watching her with tears in his eyes. That, he signed. That is what I'm talking about. That is music. Sarah felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride, hope, possibility. They worked until 8 o'clock at night. By the time Sarah left, her fingers were sore and her back ached from sitting at the piano for so long. But she felt good. Really good. She took the bus home in the dark. The city lights blurred past the window. Sarah felt tired but also energized. She had 5 weeks and 6 days left until the competition. That was enough time. It had to be enough time. When she got home, her parents were waiting in the living room. They wanted to hear about her day. Sarah told them everything. About Derek's bet. About the Moonlight Sonata. About Professor Morrison's teaching. Her father, Robert Martinez, looked worried. He was a mechanic. A practical man. He loved Sarah fiercely, but he always worried about her getting hurt. Are you sure about this, Mija? He signed. This boy sounds cruel. What if he hurts you? He can't hurt me more than staying silent would, Sarah signed back. I have to do this, Papa. I have to show people that I'm more than my deafness. Her father nodded slowly. He understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. Then we support you, he signed. Whatever you need. That night, Sarah lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the journey ahead. 5 weeks and 6 days, 40 days, 960 hours. It seemed like a lot of time, but it also seemed like no time at all. She rolled over and looked at her phone. She had a message from an unknown number. Good luck at the competition. You're going to need it. It was from Derek. Sarah deleted the message. She didn't need his negativity. She didn't need his doubts. She opened her messages and typed a new one to Professor Morrison. Same time tomorrow? The response came immediately. Same time every day. We have work to do, Sarah smiled. She put her phone away and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would practice. The day after that she would practice. Every day until the competition. Every moment she could spare. Derek thought he had already won. He thought this was a joke, a game, something to laugh about with his friends. But Sarah knew something Derek didn't know. She knew that music wasn't about hearing. It was about feeling. And she could feel music deeper than Derek ever would. She just had to prove it. Sarah fell asleep with her hands curled into fists, like she was already playing the piano in her dreams, like she was already fighting the battle, and in a way she was. The real fight had just begun. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah made her challenge to Derek. 3 weeks of the hardest work she had ever done. 3 weeks of practicing until her fingers bled. 3 weeks of falling into bed exhausted every single night. Sarah woke up at 5 in the morning every day now. She would practice for 2 hours before school. Silent practice. Just her hands moving over a practice keyboard that Professor Morrison had lent her. No sound, just muscle memory. Just feeling. Then school. Then more practice at Professor Morrison's apartment for 3 hours. then home, then one more hour of practice before bed. Her whole life had become music. Everything else faded into the background. Homework, friends, sleep. None of it mattered as much as the piano, but the work was paying off. Sarah could feel it. The third movement of Moonlight Sonata was becoming part of her. Not something she played, something she was. This morning was different, though. Sarah woke up and her right hearing aid wouldn't turn on. She pressed the button. Nothing. She shook it. Nothing. The battery was dead. No problem. Sarah kept extra batteries in her desk drawer. She opened the drawer and pulled out the package. Empty. Sarah's heart started beating faster. She needed her hearing aids. She needed to hear at least something. How could she go to school without them? She ran to her parents' room. Her mother was already awake, getting ready for work. "Mom," Sarah signed frantically. "My hearing aid battery died. Do we have more?" Her mother's face fell. "Oh no. I forgot to buy them yesterday." "I'm so sorry, baby. We're completely out. What do I do?" Sarah signed. Panic was rising in her chest. "I'll stop by the store after work," her mother signed. "I'll bring them home tonight. Can you make it through the day with one hearing aid?" Sarah nodded. She didn't have a choice. She went back to her room and got ready for school with only her left hearing aid working. The world sounded different, unbalanced, like she was underwater. At school, everything was harder. With only one hearing aid, Sarah could barely understand what teachers were saying. She had to focus twice as hard, concentrate twice as much. It was exhausting. But worse than the classes was Derek. He had been taunting Sarah every single day for 3 weeks. Small comments in the hallway. Mocking looks during lunch. Messages from unknown numbers. Nothing too obvious. Nothing a teacher would notice. But enough to wear her down. Today, with only one hearing aid working, Derek seemed to sense weakness. Sarah was at her locker between classes when Derek walked up with Marcus and Jason. They stood behind her, blocking her escape route. "Hey, Sarah," Derek said loudly. "How's the practice going? Ready to embarrass yourself in front of everyone yet?" Sarah ignored him. She grabbed her math book and tried to close her locker. Derek put his hand on the locker door, holding it open. "I'm talking to you," Derek said. "Or can you not hear me? Oh wait, you can't hear much anyway, right?" Marcus and Jason laughed. Other students in the hallway started to notice. They stopped to watch. Sarah took a deep breath. She pulled out her phone and typed a message. "Move." She showed it to Derek. Derek read it and smiled. "Or what? What are you going to do?" Sarah's hands were shaking. She wanted to push past him. She wanted to scream. But she couldn't. She was trapped. Then a voice cut through the tension. "Leave her alone, Derek." Everyone turned. Emma was standing there. Derek's girlfriend. Her arms were crossed and she looked angry. "Emma," Derek said. His voice changed, softer. "We're just joking around." "No, you're not," Emma said. "You're being a bully. And I'm sick of watching it." Derek looked shocked. "What? I'm not—" "Yes, you are," Emma interrupted. "For 3 weeks I've watched you mock Sarah. I've watched you try to break her down. And I didn't say anything because I don't know why. But I'm saying something now. Stop." The hallway was completely quiet. Everyone was staring. This was big news. Emma never challenged Derek, never disagreed with him publicly. Derek's face turned red. "Emma, can we talk about this later? In private?" "No," Emma said. "Say it now. Tell Sarah you'll stop." Derek looked around at all the watching faces. He looked at Sarah, then back at Emma. "Fine," he said through clenched teeth. "Whatever. I'll stop." He pushed past Emma and walked away. Marcus and Jason followed him, looking confused. The crowd slowly dispersed. Students went back to their lockers, back to their conversations. The show was over. Emma walked over to Sarah. She looked tired, sad. "I'm sorry," Emma said. "I should have done that weeks ago." Sarah pulled out her phone and typed, "Thank you." Emma smiled. A real smile. Not the perfect, practiced smile she usually wore. A genuine one. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said. Sarah nodded. "Why are you doing this? The competition, I mean. Everyone says you're going to lose. Everyone says it's pointless, so why?" Sarah thought about the question. Why was she doing this? She typed carefully on her phone. "Because I'm tired of being told what I can't do. I'm tired of people deciding my limits for me. Even if I lose, at least I tried. At least I fought." Emma read the message. Her eyes got watery. That's brave, Emma said quietly. I wish I was that brave. Before Sarah could respond, the bell rang. Emma wiped her eyes quickly. I have to go, Emma said. But good luck, Sarah, I mean it. I really hope you do well. Then she was gone. Sarah stood alone in the hallway. She felt strange, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted, but she didn't have time to think about it. She had to get to math class. The rest of the school day was difficult. Without both hearing aids, Sarah struggled more than usual. But she pushed through. She always pushed through. After school, Sarah went straight to Professor Morrison's apartment. She climbed the familiar stairs and knocked on the door. Professor Morrison opened it and immediately knew something was wrong. He looked at Sarah's ears. Only one hearing aid, what happened? He signed. Sarah explained about the dead battery, about having to go through the day with only one hearing aid, about Derek and Emma and the confrontation. Professor Morrison listened to it all. Then he walked to his piano and patted the bench. Sit, he signed. Sarah sat down. She placed her hands on the keys. Close your eyes, Professor Morrison signed. Sarah closed her eyes. Now take out your hearing aid, he signed. Sarah's eyes flew open. What? No, I need it. Trust me, Professor Morrison signed. Take it out, Sarah hesitated. Then slowly she reached up and removed her left hearing aid, the one that was still working. Complete silence fell over her. Total silence, nothing. Sarah's heart started racing. This was scary. Being completely deaf with no help at all. She started to put the hearing aid back in, but Professor Morrison stopped her. He took her hands and placed them back on the piano keys. Play, he signed. Just feel. Don't worry about hearing. Don't worry about sound. Just feel the music. Sarah was scared. How could she play with no sound at all? How could she stay on time? How could she know if she was playing correctly? But she trusted Professor Morrison. She took a deep breath. She closed her eyes. And she began to play. At first it was terrible. Sarah couldn't feel the rhythm. She couldn't tell if her fingers were hitting the right keys. Panic started to rise. But then Professor Morrison placed his hand on her shoulder. Firm, steady, grounding. Sarah focused on the vibrations, on the feeling of the keys under her fingers, on the movement of her hands, on the emotion she was trying to express. Slowly something changed. The panic faded. The fear quieted. Sarah sank into the music, into the feeling, into the emotion. She played the third movement of Moonlight Sonata from memory. Every note, every section. She didn't know if it sounded good. She couldn't hear it at all. But she could feel it. In her bones. In her soul. When she finished, she opened her eyes. Professor Morrison was crying. Real tears running down his old wrinkled face. He pulled Sarah into a hug. A tight, warm hug. When he let go, he signed, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced." Not heard, experienced. Really? Sarah signed. But I couldn't hear anything. How do I know if I played it right? You played it perfectly, Professor Morrison signed. Because you played it with pure emotion. No doubt, no second guessing, just feeling. He sat down on the bench next to her. This is the secret, he signed. The secret Derek will never understand. Music isn't about perfect technique. It's not about playing every note exactly right. It's about emotion. It's about expressing something words can't say. He took Sarah's hands. You can compete with Derek on technique, he signed. You've practiced enough. You're good enough. But you won't beat him that way. He's been playing since he was 5. His fingers are faster. His training is longer. Sarah's heart sank. Then how do I win? You beat him with emotion, Professor Morrison signed. You play something he can't. You make the judges feel something he can't make them feel. You show them what music really is. Professor Morrison stood up and walked to his bookshelf. He pulled down an old photo album. He opened it and showed Sarah a picture. It was a young man, handsome, confident, standing next to a piano in a concert hall. That's me, Professor Morrison signed. 30 years ago, before my accident, I was just like Derek, arrogant, talented. I thought I was the best. I thought music was about being technically perfect. He turned the page. Another photo. The same man, but older, wearing hearing aids, standing next to the same piano. That's me 5 years after my accident, Professor Morrison signed. I had lost my hearing, lost my confidence, lost everything I thought made me a musician. He turned to another page. More photos. The man teaching students, playing at small events, smiling, really smiling. That's me learning what music really means, Professor Morrison signed. Learning that it's not about hearing. It's about feeling. It took me years to understand that. Years of pain and struggle and learning. He closed the album and looked at Sarah. You already understand it, he signed. You've always understood it. Because you've had to. You've never been able to rely on just hearing. You've always had to feel music deeper. That's your gift. That's your strength. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. She wiped them away. I'm still scared, she signed. I know, Professor Morrison signed. But you're ready. Not because you're perfect, but because you understand what matters. Now put your hearing aid back in and let's keep practicing. We have 2 weeks left. Sarah put her hearing aid back in. The world became slightly louder again. Not much, but enough. They practiced for 3 more hours. But it was different now. Sarah wasn't just trying to play the notes correctly. She was trying to express the emotion, the anger, the pain, the triumph, all of it. When Sarah finally left to go home, it was dark outside. The street lights were on. The city was settling into night. Sarah walked to the bus stop thinking about everything Professor Morrison had said. About emotion versus technique. About feeling versus hearing. About what music really meant. The bus arrived and Sarah climbed on. She found a seat near the back and stared out the window. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. 2 weeks left. Hope you're ready to lose. Derek, of course. Sarah almost deleted the message like she always did, but then she stopped. She typed a response. I'm ready. Are you? She sent it. Then she blocked the number. She didn't need Derek's messages anymore. She didn't need his doubt. The bus pulled up to her stop. Sarah got off and walked the 2 blocks to her house. When she got home, her mother was waiting with new batteries for her hearing aid. Sarah hugged her mother tight. Then she went to her room and replaced the battery in her right hearing aid. Sound flooded back, clearer, fuller, better. But Sarah knew now that she didn't need the sound. Not really. The sound was helpful, but it wasn't essential. The music lived deeper than sound. It lived in feeling, in emotion, in soul. Sarah pulled out her practice keyboard. She set it up on her desk, and she practiced for 1 more hour before bed. Her fingers moved over the silent keys. No sound came out, but Sarah didn't need sound. She had something better. She had understanding. At school the next day, something was different. Sarah could feel it. Students were looking at her differently. Not with pity, not with mockery, with curiosity, respect. At lunch, a girl Sarah had never talked to sat down at her table. Hi, the girl said. She spoke slowly and clearly so Sarah could read her lips. I'm Jennifer. I just wanted to say, I think what you're doing is really cool. Sarah was surprised. She pulled out her phone and typed, thank you. I play guitar, Jennifer continued, and I've been too scared to perform in public. Too scared of what people will think. But watching you, it made me realize I should just go for it. Sarah smiled. She typed on her phone, you should. Don't let fear stop you. Jennifer smiled back. Thanks, good luck at the competition. I'll be there watching. She stood up and walked away. Sarah sat alone again. But she didn't feel alone. She felt supported, encouraged. Like maybe, just maybe, she was making a difference. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Sarah practiced every single day, sometimes with Professor Morrison, sometimes alone, always pushing herself, always trying to go deeper into the emotion of the piece. Derek stopped bothering her. After Emma's confrontation, he kept his distance. But Sarah could feel his eyes on her sometimes, watching, judging, waiting for her to fail. Emma, on the other hand, became friendlier. She would smile at Sarah in the hallway, wave sometimes. They didn't talk much. But there was an understanding between them, a mutual respect. 5 days before the competition, Sarah's mother came home from work with a surprise. She had taken the day off. She wanted to take Sarah shopping for a dress. You need something nice to wear, her mother signed. Something that makes you feel confident, strong. They went to the mall, to a fancy dress store. Sarah tried on 5 different dresses. Some were too fancy, some were too plain, but the 6th dress was perfect. It was dark blue, simple, elegant. It made Sarah feel like a professional musician. like someone who belonged on stage. That's the one, her mother signed. Tears were in her eyes. You look beautiful, Mija. They bought the dress. They also bought new shoes. And a simple necklace. Sarah felt like she was preparing for battle. Armor for the war ahead. 3 days before the competition, Professor Morrison did something unexpected. He closed the piano lid. No more practice today, he signed. What? Sarah signed back. But the competition is in 3 days. I need to practice. No, Professor Morrison signed firmly. You need to rest. You're ready. More practice won't help now. You'll just tire yourself out. Today we rest, Sarah wanted to argue. But she knew Professor Morrison was right. She was exhausted. Her fingers hurt. Her back ached. Her mind was tired. Okay, she signed. What do we do instead? Professor Morrison smiled. We talk about music, about life, about what this all means. They sat on the couch. Professor Morrison made tea. They talked for hours, not about technique or timing or notes, but about why music mattered, about what it meant to them, about the lives it had shaped. I want to tell you something, Professor Morrison signed as the afternoon sun came through the window. No matter what happens at the competition, I'm proud of you. But what if I lose? Sarah signed. Then you lose, Professor Morrison signed. So what, you tried? You fought. You showed courage. That's what matters. Not the result. The journey. He reached over and patted her hand. Derek thinks winning is everything, he signed. But he's wrong. Growing is everything. Learning is everything. Becoming who you're meant to be is everything. And you've already done that. You've already won. Sarah felt tears coming again. She seemed to cry a lot these days. But they were good tears. Healing tears. Thank you, she signed. For everything. For believing in me. For teaching me. For showing me that I'm not limited by my deafness. You were never limited, Professor Morrison signed. The world tried to limit you. But you refused to accept those limits. That's the real victory. Sarah stayed at Professor Morrison's apartment until evening. When she finally left, she felt calm, peaceful, ready. 2 days before the competition, Sarah didn't practice at all. She rested. She read books. She watched movies with subtitles. She spent time with her parents. 1 day before the competition, Sarah went to the auditorium where the competition would be held. It was empty, silent. The stage looked huge. The rows and rows of seats seemed endless. Sarah walked down the aisle. She climbed the steps to the stage. She walked to the grand piano in the center. She sat down on the bench. This was it. Tomorrow, this auditorium would be full of people. Judges, students, teachers, parents, all watching. All waiting, all ready to judge. Sarah placed her hands on the keys. She played one note, just one, a single C note. The sound echoed through the empty auditorium. Beautiful. Sarah stood up. She looked out at all the empty seats. Tomorrow they would be full. Tomorrow she would play. Tomorrow she would show everyone what she had learned. Tomorrow she would prove that music wasn't about hearing. Tomorrow she would show the world what she could do. Sarah walked off the stage. She walked back up the aisle. She pushed through the auditorium doors and stepped outside into the afternoon sun. She was ready. The battle was about to begin. Competition day arrived with bright morning sunshine. Sarah woke up early, but not because of her alarm. She couldn't sleep. Nervous energy filled her entire body. Her hands were shaking. Her stomach felt tight and uncomfortable. She lay in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling. Today was the day. After 6 weeks of preparation. After countless hours of practice. After all the doubt and fear and determination. Today, everything would be decided. Sarah got up and took a long shower. The hot water helped calm her nerves a little. She stood under the stream and tried to center herself. Tried to remember everything Professor Morrison had taught her. It's not about winning. It's about expressing emotion. It's about showing the world what music really means. After her shower, Sarah got dressed. Not in the competition dress yet. That would come later. For now, she wore comfortable clothes. Sweatpants and a t-shirt. She needed to stay relaxed. Her mother was already awake in the kitchen. She was making Sarah's favorite breakfast. Pancakes with blueberries. Hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. Morning, baby, her mother signed. How do you feel? Sarah sat down at the table. Terrified, she signed honestly. Her mother smiled and placed the plate in front of her. That's normal. Being scared means you care. It means this matters. Sarah's father came downstairs. He was already dressed in his nice suit. He had taken the day off work to watch the competition. He kissed the top of Sarah's head. My daughter, the pianist, he signed with a proud smile. They ate breakfast together as a family. Nobody talked much. They didn't need to. The support was there. The love was there. That was enough. After breakfast, Sarah went back upstairs. She had 3 hours before the competition started. 3 hours to prepare. 3 hours to get ready. She pulled out her practice keyboard one last time. She placed her fingers on the keys. She played through the Moonlight Sonata's third movement in her mind. Every note, every section. She had played it hundreds of times, thousands of times. Her fingers knew exactly what to do. At 10 o'clock, Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from Professor Morrison. Today you show them who you are. Today you make music that matters. I believe in you. Now go believe in yourself. Sarah read the message 3 times. Then she saved it. She would keep it forever. At 11 o'clock, Sarah started getting dressed. She put on the dark blue dress, the new shoes, the simple necklace. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked different, older, more confident, like a real musician. Her mother came in and helped with her hair. She brushed it until it shined. Then she pulled it back into an elegant bun. Professional, clean. You look beautiful, her mother signed. Tears were in her eyes. I'm so proud of you. Sarah hugged her mother tight. Thank you for everything, she signed. For supporting me. For believing in me. For never telling me I couldn't do this. They held each other for a long moment. Then it was time to go. The drive to the auditorium took 20 minutes. Sarah sat in the back seat and watched the city pass by. Her hands were still shaking. Her heart was beating fast. But there was also something else, excitement, anticipation, readiness. They arrived at the auditorium at noon. The competition started at 1 o'clock. Students and families were already arriving. Sarah could see them walking into the building, dressed in fancy clothes, carrying instruments. Looking nervous and excited, Sarah and her parents walked in through the main entrance. The lobby was crowded. People everywhere, talking, laughing, taking photos. The energy was electric. Sarah checked in at the registration table. A woman with a clipboard gave her a number. Number 7. That meant she would be the 7th person to perform. Derek Chen is number 3, the woman said cheerfully. Should be an exciting competition. Sarah nodded and took her number. She pinned it to her dress. Her parents found seats in the auditorium. Sarah went backstage to the waiting area. Other students were already there. Some were doing vocal warm-ups. Others were practicing finger exercises. Everyone looked focused, serious. Sarah found an empty chair in the corner and sat down. She closed her eyes and tried to calm her breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow and steady, someone tapped her shoulder. Sarah opened her eyes. Emma was standing there. Sarah was surprised. What are you doing here? She signed and spoke. Emma smiled. I came to watch. And to wish you good luck. Thank you, Sarah signed. Emma sat down next to her. Derek is really nervous, she said. I've never seen him this nervous before a competition. Really? Sarah signed. Emma nodded. He knows you've been working hard. He knows you're serious. I think part of him is actually worried you might beat him. Sarah's eyes widened. Derek was worried? Derek, who had been so confident. Derek, who had mocked her and made bets and acted like this was all a joke. Also, Emma continued quietly, I broke up with him. Last night, Sarah stared at her. Why? She signed. Emma looked down at her hands. Because I realized I don't respect him anymore. The way he treated you. The way he treated this whole thing. It made me see who he really is. And I don't like that person. She looked back up at Sarah. But that's not your problem. I just wanted you to know. And I wanted to say thank you. For what? Sarah signed. For showing me what real courage looks like, Emma said. For standing up for yourself. For not backing down even when everyone doubted you. You inspired me to be braver too. Before Sarah could respond, a voice came over the loudspeaker. Competition begins in 5 minutes. All performers, please prepare. Emma stood up. I should go find my seat. Good luck, Sarah. Really, I'll be cheering for you. She walked away. Sarah sat alone again. Her hands were shaking harder now. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes until it all began. Sarah walked to the side of the stage. She could see through a gap in the curtains. The auditorium was almost full. Hundreds of people, all there to watch, all there to judge. The lights dimmed. The crowd quieted. A man walked onto the stage. He was one of the judges, a music professor from the state university. "Welcome to the state piano competition," he said into the microphone. "We have 12 talented performers today. Let's give them all our support and appreciation." The crowd applauded. Sarah's heart was racing so fast she thought it might explode. "Our first performer is Amanda Walsh playing Mozart's Piano Sonata No. 16. A girl walked onto the stage. She sat at the piano. She began to play. Through the curtain gap, Sarah watched. The girl was good. Really good. Her fingers moved smoothly. The music flowed naturally. Sarah tried not to compare herself. Everyone had their own style, their own strengths. She just needed to focus on her own performance, Amanda finished. The crowd applauded. She stood up, bowed, and walked off stage. She was smiling, relieved. The next performer went. Then another. Each one was talented. Each one brought something different to their piece. Sarah felt her nervousness growing. These people were really good. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she embarrassed herself? Then it was Derek's turn. "Our next performer is Derek Chen playing Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor." Derek walked onto the stage. He looked confident, calm. He was wearing an expensive black suit. His hair was perfect. He sat down at the piano like he owned it. Sarah watched from the wings. This was the moment. This was Derek at his best. Derek began to play. Immediately, Sarah could tell he was incredible. His fingers moved faster than seemed possible. The complex patterns, the difficult runs. He played them all perfectly. Technically flawless, the crowd was mesmerized. Even Sarah had to admit it was impressive. Derek had practiced this piece his entire life. It showed, but something was missing. Sarah couldn't quite identify what. The notes were perfect. The timing was exact, but there was no emotion, no soul. It felt like watching a machine play. Perfect but empty. Derek finished with a dramatic flourish. The auditorium erupted in applause. People stood up. Some were even cheering. Derek stood and bowed. He was smiling, that confident smile. Like he had already won, he walked off stage. As he passed Sarah in the wings, he stopped. "Beat that," he said quietly. Not mean, just confident. Stating a fact, then he was gone. Sarah stood alone. Her heart was pounding. The applause was still going. Derek's performance had been amazing. How could she possibly compete with that? 3 more performers went. Sarah barely noticed them. Her mind was racing. Doubt was creeping in. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she should just forfeit, walk away, save herself the embarrassment. Then she remembered Professor Morrison's words. It's not about winning. It's about expressing emotion. It's about showing the world what music really means. Sarah took a deep breath. She wasn't here to beat Derek. She was here to play her music, to express her truth, to show people that music transcended hearing. Our next performer is Sarah Martinez playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, 3rd movement. This was it. Sarah's legs felt shaky as she walked onto the stage. The lights were bright. The crowd was massive. Every seat was filled. Hundreds of eyes staring at her. Sarah walked to the piano. She sat down on the bench. The piano was beautiful, black and shiny. The keys looked perfect. Then Sarah did something that shocked everyone. Something she hadn't planned. Something that just felt right in the moment. She reached up and removed both of her hearing aids. First the left one, then the right one. She placed them carefully on top of the piano where everyone could see them. One person started clapping. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet. Standing ovation, thunderous applause that Sarah couldn't hear but could feel. The vibrations shook the stage. Sarah looked out at the crowd. She saw people wiping their eyes. Actual tears. Her mother was crying. Her father was crying. Even some of the judges were wiping their faces. Professor Morrison was standing in the back. He was applauding so hard his hands must have hurt. He was beaming, proud. Sarah stood up. She bowed. The applause continued. It went on and on, longer than it had for anyone else. Longer than it had for Derek. Sarah picked up her hearing aids and put them back in. Sound flooded back. The roar of the crowd. The cheers. The applause. It was overwhelming. She walked off stage. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were trembling. But she felt incredible, light, free, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She had done it. She had actually done it. She had played her heart out in front of hundreds of people, and they had responded. They had felt what she was trying to express. Backstage, other performers came up to her, congratulating her, telling her how amazing she was, how moving her performance had been. Sarah smiled and thanked them, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about Derek. Where was he? What did he think? She found him standing in the corner, alone. His confident smile was gone. He looked shocked, confused, maybe even a little bit hurt. Sarah walked over to him. They stood facing each other for a long moment. Neither one spoke. Finally, Derek broke the silence. That was, he started, then stopped. He couldn't seem to find the words. Sarah pulled out her phone and typed, "That was what?" Derek read the message. He looked at her, really looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time. "That was real," Derek said quietly. "That was music. Real music, not just notes. Not just technique, but actual music." He ran his hand through his perfect hair. It messed it up, made him look more human, less perfect. "I've been playing piano since I was 5 years old," Derek said. 12 years. "And I just realized, I don't think I've ever actually felt the music. Not like you just did. I've been playing notes, following instructions, trying to be perfect, but I've never played from the heart." Sarah didn't know what to say. She just listened. "You were right," Derek continued. "Music isn't just about hearing. It's about feeling, about emotion, about expressing something real." He paused. "I'm sorry. For everything. For mocking you. For doubting you. For being cruel. You didn't deserve any of that." Sarah typed on her phone. "Thank you for apologizing." Derek nodded. "I don't know if you'll win. The judges care about technical skill too. But you should win. You deserve to win. You understand music better than I ever will." Before Sarah could respond, the loudspeaker crackled. "All performers, please return to the stage. The judges have made their decisions." Sarah's heart jumped. This was it. The moment of truth. All 12 performers walked onto the stage. They stood in a line facing the audience. The auditorium was completely full now. Every seat taken. People standing in the back. Everyone wanted to see the results. The head judge walked to the microphone. He was an older man. Gray hair, kind eyes. He had a piece of paper in his hand. "What an incredible day of music," he said. "Every single performer showed remarkable talent and dedication. You should all be very proud." He paused. The suspense was killing Sarah. "We'll start with third place," the judge continued. "Third place goes to Amanda Walsh for her interpretation of Mozart." Amanda stepped forward. She received her trophy and certificate. The crowd applauded. She was beaming. "Second place," the judge said. His eyes scanned the paper. Sarah's heart was beating so fast. "Second place goes to Sarah Martinez for her powerful performance of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata." Sarah's heart sank and soared at the same time. Second place. She had gotten second place. She hadn't won, but she had placed. She had actually placed in a state competition. The crowd erupted in applause, louder than for Amanda. People were cheering, whistling. Sarah walked forward on shaky legs. The judge handed her a large silver trophy and a certificate. "That was one of the most moving performances I've seen in 30 years of judging," the judge said quietly to her. "You have a real gift." Sarah nodded. She couldn't speak. Tears were in her eyes. "And first place," the judge announced. "First place goes to Derek Chen for his technically flawless performance of Rachmaninoff." Derek walked forward. He received his gold trophy. The crowd applauded. But it wasn't as loud as it had been for Sarah, not as enthusiastic. People were clapping out of respect, but their hearts weren't in it. Not like they had been for Sarah. Derek noticed. Sarah could see it in his face. He had won, but it felt hollow, empty. The 12 performers stood together for a photo. Flashes went off. Parents rushed forward. It was chaos and joy and relief all mixed together. Sarah's parents reached her first. Her mother hugged her so tight Sarah could barely breathe. Her father was openly crying, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so proud of you," her father signed when he could finally let go. "So incredibly proud." Professor Morrison was next. He hugged Sarah and signed, "You did it. You showed them. You showed everyone what music really means." Emma pushed through the crowd. She hugged Sarah too. "You were amazing. Everyone is talking about your performance. You were the real winner today." More people came. Teachers from school. Students Sarah barely knew. Strangers who had been in the audience. Everyone wanted to congratulate her. Everyone wanted to tell her how moving her performance had been. Sarah felt overwhelmed. Happy, exhausted, proud, so many emotions at once. In the crowd, she saw Derek standing with his parents. His mother was fussing over his trophy. His father was shaking hands with people. But Derek looked distant, like his mind was somewhere else. Their eyes met across the crowd. Derek gave her a small nod, a respectful nod, an acknowledgement. Then he turned away. Sarah didn't feel bad about getting second place. She had never been competing to beat Derek. She had been competing to prove something to herself, to prove that she belonged, that her dreams were valid. That music was for everyone, not just people who could hear perfectly. And she had proven all of that. Second place or first place didn't matter. What mattered was that she had tried. She had fought. She had shown courage. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Sarah stood on the stage holding her silver trophy. She looked out at the empty seats, at the place where hundreds of people had watched her perform. She had done something impossible today, something everyone said couldn't be done. A deaf girl had competed in a piano competition, and not just competed. She had moved people. She had made them feel something real. That was worth more than any gold trophy. That was worth more than any first place. That was worth everything. Professor Morrison came and stood beside her on the stage. He put his arm around her shoulders. "How do you feel?" he signed. Sarah thought about the question. How did she feel? "Complete," she signed back. "Like I finally proved to myself that I'm enough. That I've always been enough." Professor Morrison smiled. "You were always enough, Sarah. The world just needed to catch up to what you already knew." They stood together on the empty stage. Teacher and student. Two deaf musicians who had refused to let the world define their limits. The journey had been hard. The struggle had been real. But Sarah had made it. She had climbed the mountain. She had reached the peak. And the view from up here was beautiful. Sarah looked down at her silver trophy. Second place. The word second was engraved on a small plaque. But to Sarah, it might as well have said first. It might as well have said champion. It might as well have said winner. Because that's what she was. A winner. Not because of the placement, but because of the journey. Because of the courage. Because of the refusal to give up. Sarah Martinez. Deaf pianist, musician, fighter, dreamer, and she was just getting started. The day after the competition, Sarah woke up feeling different. The nervous energy was gone. The pressure was lifted. She felt peaceful, content, like she could finally breathe again. Her silver trophy sat on her desk. The morning sun caught it and made it shine. Second place. Sarah smiled at it. She wasn't disappointed. Not at all. She had achieved something incredible. Her phone had exploded overnight. Dozens of messages. Congratulations from classmates. Friends she didn't even know she had. Even some teachers had sent messages, but one message stood out. It was from an unknown number. "Hi, Sarah. This is Mrs. Henderson, the music teacher at school. I owe you an apology. I saw what Derek did to you in the music room 6 weeks ago, and I said nothing. I should have defended you. I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry. Your performance yesterday was extraordinary. I would be honored if you would consider joining the school's music program. We need more students like you, students who understand what music really means." Sarah read the message 3 times. Mrs. Henderson wanted her to join the music program. The official school music program. Not hiding anymore, not practicing in secret, out in the open where everyone could see. Sarah typed back, "Thank you. I would love to join." She got out of bed and went downstairs. Her parents were in the kitchen. The local newspaper was spread out on the table. Her father was reading it with a huge smile on his face. "Look," he signed excitedly. He pointed to the paper. There was an article about the competition. The headline read, "Deaf student delivers most moving performance in state competition history." Below the headline was a photo. Sarah at the piano, her eyes closed, her hands on the keys, her hearing aid sitting on top of the piano. The image was powerful. Emotional. Real. Sarah read the article. It talked about her performance, about the standing ovation, about how she had moved the entire audience to tears. It quoted one of the judges. "In 30 years of judging piano competitions, I have never witnessed such raw, pure emotion. Sarah Martinez didn't just play Beethoven. She embodied him. She understood his struggle on a level that transcends hearing. This young woman has a gift that goes far beyond technical skill. She has the soul of a true musician." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She had done it. She had really done it. She had shown people what she was capable of. Her mother hugged her from behind. "The whole city is talking about you," she signed. "You're an inspiration." Sarah didn't know what to say. She had never wanted to be an inspiration. She had just wanted to play piano. But maybe that was enough. Maybe just being herself was enough. At noon, Sarah's doorbell rang. Her mother answered it. Professor Morrison was standing there. He was dressed nicely, more formally than usual. He had a serious look on his face. "Can I speak with Sarah?" He signed to her mother. Of course, her mother signed back. She called Sarah downstairs. Professor Morrison came inside. They all sat in the living room. Sarah's parents looked curious. Professor Morrison looked nervous. That was unusual. He was never nervous. "Sarah," Professor Morrison signed, "I have something important to tell you. Something I've been working on for the past few weeks." Sarah waited. Her heart was beating faster. "What was this about?" "You know, I stopped teaching publicly after my accident," Professor Morrison signed. "I stopped performing. I stopped being part of the music world because people told me a deaf person couldn't be a real musician." Sarah nodded. She knew this story. "But watching you these past 6 weeks," Professor Morrison continued, "watching your courage, watching your determination, it made me realize something. I gave up too easily. I let the world silence me. I shouldn't have done that." He reached into his bag and pulled out some papers. Official-looking papers with fancy letterhead. "I've been accepted to teach at the New York School for Deaf Musicians," Professor Morrison signed. His hands were shaking slightly. "It's a new program, a revolutionary program, teaching music to deaf students, showing the world that music isn't just about hearing." Sarah's eyes went wide. "That's amazing." She signed. "Wait," Professor Morrison signed. "There's more." He handed her the papers. Sarah looked at them. Her mouth dropped open. It was an acceptance letter. For her. The New York School for Deaf Musicians wanted her to attend their program. A full scholarship. Housing included. Everything paid for. "They saw the video of your performance," Professor Morrison signed. "Someone recorded it and posted it online. It's gone viral. Millions of views. The school contacted me. They want you, Sarah. They want you to be part of their first class." Sarah couldn't breathe. New York, a music school? A full scholarship? This was too much, too big. Too incredible to be real. Her parents were reading the papers over her shoulder. Her mother was crying happy tears. Her father looked shocked but proud. "This is a huge opportunity," Professor Morrison signed. "You would study with the best teachers. Learn from other deaf musicians. You could have a real career in music. A real future." Sarah's hands were shaking. "When would I have to go?" She signed. "The program starts in 3 months," Professor Morrison signed. "After you graduate high school. You would move to New York over the summer. 3 months. Sarah had 3 months to prepare for the biggest change of her life. She looked at her parents. "What do you think?" She signed. Her mother wiped her tears. "I think you should go," she signed. "I think this is your dream coming true. We'll miss you terribly, but we want you to follow your passion." Her father nodded. "You've already proven you can do impossible things," he signed. "This is just the next step." Sarah looked back at Professor Morrison. "Will you really be there?" She signed. "Teaching?" "I'll be there," he signed. "We'll continue our journey together. Teacher and student, but also colleagues, partners in showing the world what music can be." Sarah felt overwhelmed. Yesterday she had competed in a piano competition. Today she was being offered a chance to study music in New York. How had her life changed so fast? But she knew the answer. It had changed because she had taken a risk. Because she had been brave. Because she had refused to accept the limits other people tried to put on her. "I'll do it," Sarah signed. "I'll go to New York." Professor Morrison broke into a huge smile. He hugged Sarah tight. "I'm so proud of you," he signed. So incredibly proud. They spent the next hour talking about the program. About New York, about what Sarah's life would look like. It was exciting and scary and wonderful all at once. When Professor Morrison finally left, Sarah sat alone in her room. She looked at the acceptance letter. The New York School for Deaf Musicians. It was real. This was really happening. Her phone buzzed. A message from Emma. Have you seen the video? You're famous. Sarah opened her social media. Emma was right. The video of her performance had been shared thousands of times. Hundreds of comments, most of them positive, supportive, encouraging. This made me cry. So beautiful. Proof that music transcends hearing, incredible. My daughter is deaf and loves music. Thank you for showing her that her dreams are possible. That last comment made Sarah pause. Someone's daughter. Inspired by her. That meant something. That mattered. But there were negative comments too. Second place is still losing. Derek was technically better. He should have gotten more credit. This is just political correctness. Real musicians can hear. Sarah read those comments too. They stung a little. But not as much as they would have 6 weeks ago. Because Sarah knew the truth now. She knew that those people were wrong. She had proven them wrong. The next day, Sarah went back to school. She was nervous. Would people treat her differently? Would they stare more than usual? Would Derek say something mean? But when Sarah walked through the school doors, something unexpected happened. People smiled at her. Really smiled. Not pity smiles. Genuine, warm smiles. Great job at the competition. A boy from her math class said as he passed, "You were amazing." A girl from English class signed. She had learned some sign language just to tell Sarah that. Sarah walked to her locker. A group of students were gathered there. They parted when they saw her coming. On her locker was a poster. It was the photo from the newspaper. Sarah at the piano. Below it, someone had written, "Lincoln High's own musical hero." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She had spent so much time feeling like an outsider, like someone who didn't belong. But now people were celebrating her, accepting her, seeing her for who she really was. The school day passed quickly. Teachers congratulated her. Students asked questions about the competition, about her performance, about how she learned to play piano. At lunch, Sarah went to the cafeteria. She got her tray and looked for a place to sit. Her usual corner table was there, empty as always. But then Jennifer, the girl who played guitar, waved at her. She was sitting with a group of other students, music students. She was inviting Sarah to sit with them. Sarah hesitated. Then she walked over. "Can I sit here?" She typed on her phone. "Of course," Jennifer said. "We've been waiting for you." Sarah sat down. The other students introduced themselves. There was Marcus on drums, Lisa on violin, James on saxophone. They were all part of the school's music program. And now they wanted Sarah to be part of it too. They talked about music, about their favorite composers, about performances they had seen. Sarah followed the conversation by reading lips and watching people's phones when they typed things out for her. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt like she truly belonged, not despite her deafness, not in spite of it, just as herself, a musician who happened to be deaf. Then Derek walked into the cafeteria. Sarah tensed. She hadn't seen him since the competition, hadn't talked to him. She didn't know if he was still angry, still competitive, still mean. Derek got his lunch and looked around the cafeteria. His eyes found Sarah's table. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Derek did something surprising. He walked over. "Can I talk to you?" Derek asked. He spoke slowly so Sarah could read his lips. "Alone?" Sarah looked at her new friends. They looked protective, ready to defend her if needed. But Sarah nodded. "It's okay," she signed to them. She stood up and followed Derek outside to the courtyard. They sat on a bench under a tree. Derek looked uncomfortable, nervous, human. "I've been thinking a lot since the competition," Derek started. "About music, about why I play, about what it means to me." Sarah waited. She had learned that sometimes the best thing to do was just listen. "I realized something," Derek continued. "I don't actually love music. I'm good at it, really good, but I don't love it. Not like you do." He looked down at his hands, the hands that had won first place, the hands that could play Rachmaninoff perfectly. "I play because my parents expect me to," Derek said. "Because I've always been good at it. Because it makes me look impressive, but I've never played for myself. I've never played from my heart. He looked at Sarah. You play because you love it. Because music is part of your soul. That's what I saw on stage. That's what everyone saw. And that's why you should have won. Sarah pulled out her phone. She typed carefully. You won fair and square. You played perfectly. The judges scored on technical skill and you deserve first place for that. Derek read the message and shook his head. But music isn't about technical skill. You taught me that. Music is about emotion, about expression, about connecting with people, and you did all of that better than I ever could. He paused, then reached into his backpack. He pulled out his gold trophy, the first place trophy. He held it out to Sarah. I want you to have this, Derek said. Sarah's eyes went wide. She shook her head and pushed the trophy back. She typed on her phone. No, you earned that. It's yours, but I don't want it, Derek said. Every time I look at it, I just feel empty. Like I won something that doesn't matter. Please, take it. It means more to you than it does to me. Sarah looked at the trophy, the gold shining in the afternoon sun. First place. The thing she had worked so hard for. The thing that had seemed so important. But Sarah realized something. She didn't need it. She didn't want it. She had already won everything that mattered. She had proven herself. She had inspired people. She had changed hearts and minds. A trophy was just metal, just an object. What she had gained was so much more than that. Keep it, she typed. Maybe it will remind you to find what you really love. To do something from your heart instead of for other people. Derek looked at the trophy, then back at Sarah. What if music isn't what I really love? He asked quietly. Then find what is, Sarah typed. Life is too short to spend it doing things that don't make your soul happy. I learned that. Now you need to learn it too. Derek nodded slowly. He put the trophy back in his backpack. They sat in silence for a moment. Comfortable silence, not the hostile tension from before. I'm sorry, Derek said finally. For everything. For mocking you. For the bet. For being cruel. You didn't deserve any of that. I forgive you, Sarah typed. Everyone deserves a second chance. Derek smiled. A real smile. Not the confident, arrogant smile from before. An actual, genuine smile. I heard you're going to New York, Derek said. To that music school. That's incredible. How did you know? Sarah typed. Emma told me, Derek said. She's really happy for you. We're trying to be friends now, after the breakup. It's weird but good, Sarah nodded. She was glad Emma and Derek were working things out. In a strange way, this whole experience had helped both of them grow. Good luck in New York, Derek said. He stood up. I mean it. I think you're going to do amazing things. Thank you, Sarah signed and spoke. Derek waved goodbye and walked back into the school. Sarah sat alone on the bench. The afternoon sun was warm on her face. Birds were flying overhead. Students were laughing somewhere nearby. Life was good. Life was really, really good. The next 3 months passed quickly. Sarah finished high school. She graduated with honors. At the graduation ceremony, she was awarded a special recognition for her achievement in music. The whole auditorium stood and applauded. She spent her last weeks at home preparing for New York, packing her clothes, saying goodbye to friends, spending time with her parents. Every moment was precious. Every memory mattered. Professor Morrison helped her prepare. They talked about what to expect at the school, about New York City, about living on her own for the first time. You're ready, he signed during their last lesson in his apartment. You've always been ready. You just needed to believe it yourself. The day before Sarah left for New York, the school held a special assembly. Mrs. Henderson had organized it. It was called Music for Everyone, Sarah's Story. Sarah stood on the stage in the auditorium. The same stage where she had been mocked 6 months ago. The same stage where she had practiced in secret. Now she was standing there as a graduate, as a musician, as proof that dreams could come true. Mrs. Henderson interviewed her in front of the whole school, asked about her journey, about the competition, about going to New York. Then came the surprise. Mrs. Henderson announced that the school was creating a new program, a program for students with disabilities who wanted to study music. It would be called the Sarah Martinez Music Initiative. Sarah started crying, right there on stage in front of everyone. Happy tears, grateful tears. You showed us that music has no limits, Mrs. Henderson said. That passion and determination can overcome any obstacle. This program will make sure that every student, regardless of their abilities, has the chance to pursue their musical dreams. The auditorium erupted in applause. Students were standing, cheering. Sarah looked out at all the faces. Some she knew, some she didn't, but all of them were supporting her. All of them were celebrating her achievement. That night, Sarah's parents threw a small going-away party. Close family, Professor Morrison, Emma, Jennifer, and the other music students. Even Derek came. It was intimate, warm, full of love. They shared stories, laughed together, cried a little. Sarah's mother made all of Sarah's favorite foods. Her father told embarrassing stories from when Sarah was little. When the party ended and everyone left, Sarah sat with her parents on the couch. Her suitcases were packed by the door. Tomorrow she would fly to New York. Tomorrow her new life would begin. "I'm scared," Sarah signed to her parents. "I know," her mother signed back. "But you're also brave, and that's more important." "We believe in you," her father signed. "We always have. We always will." They held each other, a family united by love, by support, by unwavering belief in each other. The next morning, Sarah woke up early. She looked around her room one last time, at her posters on the wall, at her books on the shelf, at her silver trophy on the desk. This had been her home for 16 years. Now she was leaving, moving forward. Growing up, Sarah's parents drove her to the airport. The car ride was quiet. Not sad quiet, just thoughtful quiet. Everyone was processing the change. The new chapter beginning. At the airport, Sarah checked her bags, got her boarding pass, then stood with her parents at the security checkpoint. This was where they would have to say goodbye. Her mother hugged her first, long and tight. "I love you so much," she signed when she finally let go. "Call us every day, even if it's just a quick message." Her father hugged her next. He was trying not to cry. "You're the bravest person I know," he signed. "Go show New York what you can do." Sarah was crying now too. "Thank you," she signed, "for everything. For supporting me. For believing in me. For never telling me I couldn't do something just because I'm deaf." "You were never just deaf," her mother signed. "You were always just Sarah, perfect exactly as you are." Sarah picked up her carry-on bag. She looked at her parents one last time. Then she turned and walked through security. She looked back once. Her parents were waving, smiling through their tears. Sarah waved back. Then she walked forward, toward her gate, toward her plane, toward her future. On the plane, Sarah found her seat by the window. She looked out at the city below as the plane took off. The city where she had grown up. The city where she had faced her fears. The city where she had discovered who she really was. But that was just the beginning. The real journey was starting now. Sarah pulled out her phone. She had one last message to send. To Professor Morrison. "On my way. See you soon. Thank you for changing my life." The response came quickly. "You changed your own life. I just showed you the door. You're the one who walked through it. See you in New York." Sarah put her phone away. She closed her eyes and felt the vibration of the plane engines. The same way she felt music. Through vibration. Through feeling. Through something deeper than sound. She thought about Derek's question from months ago. "Can you play piano?" Yes, she could play piano.